problem.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and be turning slides today for us, but it's going to be a group hosted call. It's Rachel Sample from CHIP, and I will also encourage my other co-hosts to introduce themselves. Pastor Green?
Pastor Green is here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, this is Jenny Foltz with the City of Indianapolis.
Hi, it's Diane Schissel with CICF.
One second, Kay. Oh, there. Go ahead.
Initiatives program.
Thanks, Kay. So we have an agenda today, and we'll be getting started on that. Come on. Sorry, my slides aren't advancing. There we are. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about how we got started working as a governance work group and the process in which we undertook to contract with Clutch Consulting. And then the governance work group will also talk about the information that we gathered, that Clutch gathered, and the feedback, ideas, and everything that went into developing the changes. We're also going to talk about high level, the recommended changes that are being advanced to you guys as the CoC by the Blueprint Council, and then we will also talk about our timeline and next steps. So in August 2018, the governance work group was created by the Blueprint Council, and Pastor Green was selected as our chairperson. We began meeting in October 2018 pretty regularly, and identified that the needs that we had as a community to align our charter around the new community plan were really beyond the expertise that we thought we could do on our own. And so we decided to seek outside consultants to achieve our goal of aligning our structure around our community plan, and really relied on the expertise inside the city to get that process started. So I'll turn this over to Jenny.
Thanks, Rachel. Again, this is Jenny Foltz, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to selecting Clutch. The governance work group finalized and issued a request for qualifications in October of 2018. And through this RFQ process, the governance work group was looking for a firm that had hands-on experience with the Continuum of Care program, and specifically with transforming CoCs with a focus on effectiveness that would also end in rapid results. Some of the criteria that was considered in the decision-making process included the firm's performance on similar projects, the ability to deliver in a timely manner, knowledge of HUD and the CoC program, the type and amount of hands-on experience, and a review of the references that they provided. So in October of 2018, the governance work group selected Clutch Consulting to assist with our continuum of care governance structure. Clutch Consulting possessed the expertise and experience of transforming the Houston and Chicago CoCs. In addition, they were and are continuing to work with Los Angeles and Denver. Excuse me. One noteworthy item that stuck out in Clutch's response was that through Houston's CoC structure, they were able to decrease chronic homelessness by 57% and veteran homelessness by 40% in just 3 years. After selecting Clutch, they immediately began to work on reviewing our Indianapolis CoC documents. They read our most recent blueprint to end homelessness and our current community plan to end homelessness. They reviewed all of the documents, notes, and minutes that were used to develop our current plan. Clutch became familiar with our current CoC structure and the Indianapolis CoC charter, and the notes on past and potential charter revisions that we have been discussing over the years. All of the review work was done. They were ready to plan their first visit to Indianapolis, which happened in February of 2019. And I am going to turn it over to Diane, who's going to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Again, this is Diane Schissel, and I'm with CICF, the Central Indiana Community Foundation. So we talked first of all about the vision for the future. And of course, our shared vision in our community is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. But we also talked more specifically about the shared vision for how our collective, how our CoC can function best to achieve that goal. And so we talked a lot about organization of our CoC. What came out of that was how our current Blueprint Council is configured. And what we thought about a lot is sort of the whole structure in terms of who sits at what level of our system. And we thought that the Blueprint Council could be most effective if we had decision makers, people who could come to the table and just make decisions at the table in terms of policy and potentially in terms of funding. And then if we could have work groups or verticals, as we're calling them, within our structure that would actually work on specific focus areas and even on funding to set up ideas and take them up to that Blueprint Council for review and really for just sort of stamp of approval and policy making. Alignment of funding, we decided, was a really important issue, bringing funders together. And so the vision includes adding 4 or so funders to that governance board table. And that would be in addition to the chair of the Department of Metropolitan Development and the CEO of IHA, who could also be considered funders. But having all of the funders at one table so that we are all hearing from the community about what is working, what the needs are, and then aligning funding with what's in that strategic plan that the entire continuum adopted, and trying to align our funding so that we can better leverage each other and hopefully make more progress towards changing our system into one where we do make homelessness brief, rare, and non-reoccurring. We also talked about how this process could look in terms of who would be the convener for all of these meetings and all of these work groups that are going to need to take place. And that is essentially who would be the backbone, or what would the backbone organization look like. And in our city, our conclusion was the organization that is most set up, adapted, ready to be the backbone agency is CHIP. And so we viewed CHIP as being most able to sort of be the convener of the meetings, the facilitator of the meetings, the facilitator of work groups, and just kind of keeping everything rolling, that there needed to be someone who was looking at keeping our strategy going every single day, who didn't have other work that they were doing with their own agency or organization, but that this was sort of their sole mission, was to keep this process going, to keep it moving, and to keep our tasks moving, and then to align with one another in terms of, you know, is there an idea that comes out of, say, a veterans group that needs funding, so that who then coordinates having those conversations and that sort of thing. So shared vision, rethinking what the Blueprint Council and our governance looks like, and then thinking about Chip leading in that backbone position. And now I am going to turn it over to, I believe it's Kay.
That's right. Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Kay Wiles from HIP. I want to go over all the work that we did in March and April to move the process forward. If you're on this call or webinar, then you probably participated in several of these community meetings. So it'll be rehashing information for you. In March, we had a community workshop in order to introduce the governance transformation and to work on a system drawing that identified, defines, and organizes all the relevant system components and roles. So we really added a blueprint to our blueprint, and we clarified the new role and expectations of CHIP, of the Blueprint Council, and of all of our membership. We also hosted a Blueprint Council workshop. At that meeting, we recommended a new board composition. We redefined the role and function of the board, and then began the draft proposal for charter amendments and proposed transition timeline. After that, there was an implementation action planning workshop. So that was held with the current committee chairs, with CHIP staff, and with the city staff. At that meeting, we worked on, we further defined the blueprint for the blueprint, and then we prioritized the implementation activities for 2019, and we began to assign project managers to each of the implementation verticals. And then that was leading towards our annual action plan for our implementation priorities for 2019. There was also a meeting with the CHIP board. That was a workshop in order to process CHIP's new role as the backbone organization, and to hear the community expectations for that role. The board took into consideration how that impacts the role of the board and the board composition, and then began to reconcile CHIP's current activities and how they'll mesh with this new role. So the board, CHIP's board, is still working through those activities in order to align CHIP to be strong in our new governance structure. We utilized Planning Investment Committee. In March, we started to experiment with action-oriented work groups. So there's two groups that are working on coordinated outreach in order to experiment with the action orientation and to restructure how we're doing street outreach and align it closer to housing. Those two things are still moving forward. And then the next slide, we had a Blueprint Council meeting where we went over the system vision and approved that system vision, and we advanced the recommendation of the charter amendments for the board composition, the lead agency role, and group work structure of the CoC membership for approval. There was a funders workshop that took place in April to introduce the governance transition and new system vision, and also to encourage active participation at various levels within the new structure and alignment of funding with that system vision. There was a meeting with what was called the kitchen cabinet planning meeting with the city. At that meeting, they talked about an expanded role for that advisory group with a focus on managing the political needs and expectations that occur in our community. There was also a project management training workshop. So that's where Clutch was meeting with staff in order to begin training on for the assigned project managers so that they're immersed in the systems thinking theory, action orientation, facilitation, and use of project management tools. And they worked with the project management tools, including work plans and activity trackers, and then began to establish priorities for those verticals and the work to be done. And then finally, there was another meeting with the Blueprint Council in order to finalize the process and approve the new board slate and transitional timeline, and then to present the preliminary annual action plan with the priorities for 2019. So March and April were action-packed, moving this work forward and really putting the flesh on the bones of it. And I am going to pass this now to Chelsea and Pastor Green, who are going to take us through next steps. Thank you.
We're going to be looking at these changes and what they look like in practice. I'm going to ask Chelsea to kind of go first, and then I'll chime back in.
Hi, this is Chelsea with CHIP, and I'm making a guest voice appearance today. So thanks to the governance work group for inviting me on the call and including me in this overview. So Pastor Green and I are going to spend kind of the remainder of this time talking through what these actual proposed changes look like in terms of the structure. And so what you can see here on the slide that's up is that we are reorganizing ourselves into kind of three major groupings. So we have what we're calling a implementation work groups, and this is really the largest kind of organization of work within this new structure, and where a lot of the work will be being driven, experimentation will be happening, and groups will come together to really kind of conceive of and test practices and policies to make sure that we are working towards our goal to house people, connect people to care, and do it much quicker in our community. So, and I'll get a little more into kind of what that looks like. The second kind of tier of this is the management team, and Diane briefly talked about the role of the management team and primarily being staffed by CHIP. And the goal of the management team, again, is to hold the system vision and to make sure that the guardrails are kind of placed around the work so that it all aligns with our 5-year community plan and the strategies that we are accountable to move forward over the next 5 years. And the management team, again, our sole focus is to help drive and support the work of the implementation work groups. So it's having sole focus. We wake up every day and end every day kind of making sure this work is moving forward and that we're helping to lift up the work coming out of the implementation work groups, to empower them, and to address any barriers or challenges they might be having. And so we kind of sit as a bridge almost between the implementation work groups that are doing the work and then the governing board that we're asking then to help codify policy, support policy, align resources, and make sure that the support is in our community to help move this work forward. So as you can see on this next slide, it goes a little more in depth into kind of the who, what, why of each of these groups. Again, the implementation work group is really where we can inform and test policies, practices in real time and really make sure we're serving people in our community in a really effective way and an efficient way. So it's aligning people's talents in the place where they have the most influence to facilitate change. The management, again, is supporting that, empowering that, and uplifting that work, and also elevating any challenges that implementation work groups may be having in the work that they're doing, to then come to the governing board and asking the governing board not to get into the day-to-day weeds of the work, but to say, here's where we need support, here's where we need policies codified, and here's where we need alignment and resources to make sure that we're all working under the same vision, under the same strategies, and moving towards the same outcomes. So with that, I think I'm going to pass it over to Pastor Green.
Yes, thanks, Chelsea, for sharing that. On the next slide, you see the appointed seats and the elected seats. And as Diane had stated earlier, we're attempting there to bring the various stakeholders together as one group. Keep in mind that this will not necessarily be eternal, but it is intentional in the sense that we want to take advantage of what we have in place in terms of government support and other items so that we can move quickly, be flexible, hopefully achieve some positive results in a quick manner. So this is it's a change from where we've currently been, but as Clutch has walked us through this process, we understand the importance of the Blueprint Council not necessarily being down in the weeds, discussing things and being slow to action. We want to make sure the action comes faster, and then those policies that come out of those work groups, that they get codified and we can move forward. So you see a number of appointed seats there, and as well as some elected seats, so that all the voices are heard as we move forward. So that's why we've appointed some seats so we can move quicker and hopefully see some positive results for our homeless community. On the next slide, you see the committee work and how it's been organized and how it's being broke down into these 13 verticals. Again, this is not eternal. We may, one day add a vertical. Something may happen. We'll be able to eliminate a vertical, but this is where we're starting at. We believe that this certainly will work and help move us along. And as we go through various things and need to make changes, we will certainly do that. I don't believe there's any one process that's going to a silver bullet that's going to end our homelessness. It's going to take working together, but this is a great first step in moving in the right direction. And if we need to adjust and work through some things or realign some things, we certainly will do that. On the next slide, you see what Diane talked about earlier. Here's what this kind of looks like, the Blueprint Council. Then you'll see the co-leads at the top, Rodney and Chelsea. And on down the line, I won't read that all to you, but that's what this governance structure looks like, with those verticals in place that will allow us certainly to be able to make some changes, test out some policies, and hopefully implement and move a lot faster than what we've currently been doing. It allows those that are close to the work to take a chance and say, let's experiment with this, versus being in our current structure where we would have debated it for 6 months and maybe never even done it. So we want to be effective with this structure. Now, obviously, there's some changes going on for everybody with CHIP being the backbone and having to be the project managers, et cetera. But what I would say to all of us that are on this call, we're all going to be making some changes. You'll see on the next slide, proposed versus current, how we're going to be hopefully much more robust as we move forward and work to help our homeless community. I would urge all of us, because this is not changes just for CHIP. This is changes for the entire plethora of organizations that are part of trying to end homelessness. The Blueprint Council is having to change. We certainly can't be into the details of every decision. CHIP obviously is shifting. We will need our service providers to change. So this is a complete change for everybody. So I'm hoping that we will embrace it and work through it as we understand that even with this, we're not saying that it's perfect, that we will be open to modifying some things as we go along and as we learn, as we experiment, as the different work groups experiment, we will move forward and make adjustments as well that will best serve our homeless community. And hopefully with this structure, it'll help move things along so policies will get codified and we will be much more efficient and effective with the time that we have to make a difference. In terms of next steps, our proposed changes are going to be posted on the website. I would encourage you, if you, your email is going to be sent out as well, but I would encourage you, if you've got other people that are part of your network, please let them know, forward your email, or encourage them to go to the website. I know people don't go to the CoC website just arbitrarily, so if you can send them there, point them there, that will help us get the word out, because we want that to happen. Also, please, if you would, put May 14th on your calendar, as we want to have a Q&A session with the governance work group. We know that with change, people often have a lot of questions, and we want to do our best to try to address your questions and your concerns. So that town hall meeting is going to be on May the 14th, if you don't already have that on your calendar. And then our target is for May the 22nd for all the CoC membership to vote on the charter changes, So, and if you've got any thoughts, comments, we certainly welcome them. Again, I want to say, I thank Clutch Consulting for the work that they have done, and the governance committee in working through this process. And just this process signals to us, if we had tried to do this on our own, we probably would still be debating some things. So the fact that we've had Clutch and to be able to get this far speaks to their value in getting to a solution or getting into a direction that will help service our homeless community. Again, you can email any of your questions, concerns to info@ndcoc.org, or if you contact any member of, I'm sure, the governance work group, we'd love to hear from you, love to dialogue with you. Any questions, concerns, or comments that you would have. Rachel, we have time for questions?
Yeah, if we went through this material much faster than I thought we would. So certainly, if we want to ask questions now, that's absolutely fine. I thought we were going to take a little longer, but you guys are efficient in your communication. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. And if anybody has a question, please ask it. We'll leave the line on and unmuted for, let's go with 5 minutes. And if you don't hesitate to ask a question, but I won't want to keep everybody all morning. So I'm going to unmute everybody. So if you currently are on audio and you don't have yourself muted on your phone, you might hear some feedback. So just be aware of that. I'm going to unmute now, and we'll be on for another 5 minutes or so to take questions. And then if our questions go longer than 5 minutes, that's great. But otherwise, we'll adjourn after about 5 minutes if we don't have any questions.
As people are thinking through this, I just wanted to say the charter changes will be up on the website, as Pastor Green mentioned, later this afternoon. And, for many of us, we've been in this work for months now. And so it can be fairly ambiguous, or it can be fairly abstract, I think. when we start looking at all of the structure. And so the charter changes really give a lot more kind of structure to this and detail about, for example, what are the duties of a project management team? What are the responsibilities of the blueprint that's different than the kind of current functioning? So I would just really encourage everyone to spend a little time with the charter and the changes leading up to the May 14th meeting, because it does give a kind of a lot more nuts and bolts to what all of this looks like substantively.
Rachel?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I see your answer now. The recording of the webinar will be posted on the website?
Yes, that's correct. We'll have a recording, and we can certainly post the slides separately too, so that folks don't have to watch the whole webinar to see the slides. We'll put those all up there.
Yeah, that would be helpful if I'm trying to explain this to other people in my organization. The slides would be really helpful. Thank you.
Brittany, I did want to respond to your question in the chart. 1 second, let me go back to that slide. Sorry. Not so. Sorry, we've got like 3 of us in one room, so I think that's why you're having some trouble. Oh, hi, Jamie. When we went through the work plan items that were drafted by the committee chairs, and I can, I know Mandy's on here too. She maybe also can speak to this, but all of the current items in the DV work plan that came up through the flip chart paper was coordinated entry related. So for right now, it's going to go under domestic violence or it's going to go under coordinated entry and the DVCES refinement. But I think that's certainly an excellent point, and it wouldn't necessarily prevent us at any point in time from deciding once that CES refinement is done to develop a DV strategy and a separate vertical if that was determined to be necessary. But that's where that's sitting now for the time being. Are there any other final questions? I know sometimes people don't want to jump in, so just giving people the opportunity now to say a question or two before we're ready to bounce off here. Okay, if anybody else on the governance work group that has anything to say before we sign off?
Nope, thanks everyone for participating.
Yep.
And thanks for organizing it, Rachel.
Yep. And hope to see whoever can make it on May 15th, and then hopefully everyone can make May 22nd.
Yes, May 14th. We'll hopefully see you there. All right, thanks everybody. I'm gonna wait for everybody to log out.